Hi, this is Hans Finzel. Today I want to talk to you about 10 secrets to become a master delegator. Did you know delegation is one of the things that frustrates people more than anything in the workplace? Poor delegation. Just today in USA Today I read a little article that said it asked people how they respond to micromanagers, and it said 55% of people have decreased productivity at work if they work for a micromanager. What does a micromanager do? A micromanager is a control freak that does not delegate well. Now, I learned this through some bitter mistakes. I did some stupid things in my career as a CEO. Let me tell you about Art, who was the communications director for my office for our enterprise. I decided we were going to do some national advertising in magazines, and so I wanted to come up with a really cool ad campaign, magazine ads. And so I brought Art into my office and I kind of gave him the vision, said, hey, you think you could come up with something? Well, he was an old newspaper guy and he loved it. He said, yeah, let me get my team together and go to work on it. Well, anybody who, if you're a boss or you're any kind of management, you know how many vendors are always approaching you and trying to sell you stuff? Well, I had a consultant who was a brand consultant just about the same time approached me about them helping us with our new brand that I was working on as the new CEO of our organization. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is perfect. I didn't know there was such a person who could just help me with brand consulting. And I said, you think you could give us some ideas for a great ad? He said, oh yeah. A couple days later, he came back with some amazing stuff. Well, what happened to Art? Well, about a week or two went by and I had a meeting with Art, and he showed me all the work that he and his team had done. And I said, Art, I've decided to go in a different direction. He was crushed. What did I do? I made so many mistakes in that story. And he didn't even know that he was competing with the consultant. I had given him a project, but then I had completely taken it away. Delegation frustrates people more than anything. Poor delegation. And one of the greatest characteristics of a great leader is somebody that really learns to delegate well. So here are 10 tips on how to really do a good job and be a master delegator. Number one, have some faith in the people whom you're delegating to. Believe in those people. Now, sometimes this is something that has to grow. Right off the bat, you don't know if people are proven or not. And I like to follow the principle, give people a little bit and see how they do. He who is faithful in a little bit, I will put in charge of much. But you got to start somewhere, and you've got to have some faith in people. If you don't have faith in the people that work for you, why are they working for you? Or why are they working in your organization? You need to get some good people that you can have faith in. So the first thing is have some faith in those people. Number two, release the desire to do it better yourself. Release the desire to do it better yourself. And you know what I found? The more gifted you are, the more stuff you can do well, the harder it is to practice this. Because if you're good at a lot of stuff that you have to delegate to other people, chances are you probably could do it better than them, at least initially. But the long-term goal of leadership is to surround yourself with people who individually all do stuff better than you could do it. You just don't want to hire a bunch of yes people who just tell you whatever you want to hear. You want to hire really gifted people. So you have to learn to release that desire to do it better yourself. Right along with that is relax. Relax from the obsession that it has to be done your way. I learned this when my kids were young, and my oldest son wanted to earn a little money, and I said, well, you can wash my car for me every week. And I kind of showed him how to do it. And now I'm one of these guys, I love a clean car, and I kind of obsess on washing my car. I just like a clean car. I don't know what my hang-up is, but first time he washed it, he did a terrible job. And I thought, oh, he's just a kid. And so I kind of showed him how to do it. Next time it was better, but I had to release that desire that he do it the way I do it. I start at the top, and then I do the hood, and then the trunk, then the fenders, and last thing I do are the wheels. That's the way I do the job. So as he was working on the car, I had to learn to relax from the obsession that he do it my way. starting with the roof, going to the windows, the hood, the trunk, the fenders, finishing with the wheels. It doesn't have to be done that way. Fundamentally, I believe that people who do a job really should have the opportunity to choose how that job will be done. As long as the outcome is good, why does it matter? Now, if you're in the surgical unit and you're operating on somebody's heart, there's an exact procedure to do that. But most of what we do can be done a lot of different ways. And I had to learn, I can try to be a little controlling. I had to relearn to just let go and let people do the job their way. You know, nobody likes control freaks. Control freaks, you know, there's a great saying, blessed are the control freaks, for they shall inhabit the earth. And control freaks do squash the human spirit, and they take away the joy of work. You know, I think one of the great joys of work is to have private ownership, like a house. If you've rented and then you bought a house, have you ever noticed how different it is between taking care of a rental unit and taking care of a house you own? There's a whole different mentality because it's my house. And I'm going to put my stamp and my character, my personality on this house. It's an investment. People feel the same way about their jobs and their tasks. And if you let them have private ownership and own it, they will do a better job. So fight that urge to be a control freak. These are 10 ways to become just a master delegator. Well, number 4, practice patience in the desire to do it faster yourself. Practice patience. Now, I'm the kind of person who can do a lot of things well, and sometimes that works against me because it takes time to delegate. I have to give them the assignment. I have to make sure they understand it. I have to give them then time to go figure out how to do it, and then they're going to come back to me. And by that time, I could have had that job done, boom, like that. So we have to have patience if we're going to become a good delegator. But what's the opposite of delegating? Controlling everything, and then your whole life is consumed, and guess what? You become a workaholic. And you work so many hours because you have to do everything yourself. So you have to have patience with people and give them time. And I find that the bigger your organization, the more you have to do this because you can't do everything yourself. And by the way, sometimes people have trouble with that as they get promoted into management and leadership, because back when they just had a job and they weren't in leadership, maybe it was a technical job, maybe whatever it was, they worked by themselves on that task. But then when you get promoted into management and leadership, you no longer do that task. Now you work through other people. And that's where you have to learn delegation. And that's why delegation is so important, working through people. That's what leaders do. Number 5, have some vision, not vision for leadership, vision that you're going to be developing other people through delegation. Have some vision for their future. You know, in my years of leadership, I got a lot of raw talent thrown at me, and people who were young. I love having young people who are raw work for me and help shape them and develop them, help them to become responsible and to know how to work in a company or a ministry or an organization. You see, so I had a vision for developing those people. That's a good part of delegation, having a vision for how they can grow. Well, number 6, this is so important. Learn the 4 key questions of delegation. This is so meaty. Be sure and write this down. The 4 key questions that every follower asks. Number 1, what am I supposed to do? Number 2, will you let me do it? Number 3, will you help me when I need it? And number 4, will you tell me how I'm doing? These 4 questions are that every follower asks. You know, one reason why people hate their jobs is they never get feedback. That last one right there, tell me how I'm doing. I've seen surveys where one of the biggest reasons of miserable jobs is that I don't ever get any feedback. My boss never tells me how I'm doing. I want to know how I'm doing, so that's a part. What am I supposed to do? Will you let me do it? Will you help me when I need it? And then will you tell me how I'm doing? That feedback loop at the end. So the 4 key questions that every follower asks. Know that and you'll be a great delegator. Number 7, now this might seem logical, but you have to assign clearly the job. You know, sometimes I run into people and they say, you know, my boss just kind of expects me to read her mind. And I don't really know what she wants. And then I get all paranoid. Am I doing the right thing? I wish she would take a little more time just to give me her vision. So if you're going to assign a task, begin by clearly, now don't tell them how to do it and you got to do this and you got to do this. No, give them a vision of the end product. What is it you want at the end as a result? Assign it clearly. And then number 8, give them authority. One of the worst things in management and leadership is to give people responsibility without authority. You got to give people authority. And so when you give them that authority, you're saying, I can run with this. I can run with this responsibility because I've been given the authority. I once worked for a guy, and this was his biggest problem. In fact, he recruited me to help him run this company. It was a great vision, and he was a great visionary. But one of the problems with visionaries is it's very hard for them to let go of anything. And he was kind of like the founder and the visionary. And he gave me jobs, gave me responsibilities, but no authority. And the next thing I found out, he was giving these same jobs and these same tasks to other people. And it was just this massive confusion about who's responsible for what. So if you're going to give somebody a task, give them the authority that goes with it. I have another great story because this is number 9, and that's hold them accountable. And I want to tell you about a fellow named Sam that worked with me in that company. Sam, hold them accountable and check up on how they're doing. So Sam was brand new recruit, and he was working for us in this upstart, and we were growing like crazy. We had this big problem, and the boss brought Sam in and said, Sam, we've got this conundrum. We've got this problem that we just can't figure out how to solve. And you have a PhD. You're a smart guy. We want you to figure this out. Well, how do you think Sam felt? He was so excited. He said, now I get to impress my boss. I get, to get an early win. I'm going to show him I'm even smarter than he thinks I am. And Sam just with reckless abandon gave himself to that task, and he did research. Now there were a couple of problems right away. There was no timeline given by this boss to Sam. When do you need it by? And there were no checkup points along the way. Would you believe that over 2 months went by, and Sam wrote a 50-page paper? It was a magnum opus. This was a very difficult and complex situation, and he did a masterful job. He sent it off to the boss, waited a few days, didn't hear anything, and yeah, I think you probably know what's coming. He bumped into the boss in the hallway, and he said, what do you think about the paper? And he said, we decided to go another direction. We decided to go another direction. Didn't bother telling Sam. Who knows who made the decisions? So many mistakes were made. And now what do you suppose happened to Sam? Well, his spirit was crushed. And I remember him telling me, I will never, ever volunteer to do anything else again in this organization. And as soon as possible, I'm going to leave, because he lost trust in the leadership. That was horrible delegation. If you think about all the mistakes that were made in that scenario, there was no timeline given, there was no accountability, and there was no checkup points along the way. I believe in giving people freedom and release, which I mentioned, but that doesn't mean you just wind them up and let them go like the Energizer Bunny. You have to check back to make sure you guys don't go askew, because Sam went in one direction and the boss and his buddies went in another direction, and it was a disaster. It was sad. Very poor delegation. Number 10, these are 10 ways to become a master delegator. Who has the monkey? Who has the monkey? You ever heard the story about, the saying, I got a monkey on my back, or what's that monkey on your back? That came from actually a Harvard study years ago about management. But What happens in delegation, I always imagine a big task that I give somebody as a monkey, and I'm putting that monkey on their back, and they're going to walk out and they're going to go work on that task. Now here's what will happen all the time. People come back to the boss and they want to talk about the monkey because there's some problems with the monkey. Maybe it's not eating well, maybe it's sick, maybe it's run away, whatever happened to it. They come with the project and they've got some problems. And so how is the boss going to react? Now what those workers often want to happen is to take that monkey and put it on the boss's back. So if you say to that person, well, I'll look into it, or let me take a look at it, or let me see what I can do, or let me talk, anything you say like that takes the monkey from that person's back and puts it on your back, and you've released them of the responsibility when they left. So whenever people would come to me talking about their monkey, I would ask them a lot of questions, give them a lot of advice, but I would make sure when they left the room, it was clear the monkey was still on their back. In fact, I had this imaginary sign over my door on the way out above the door, "Who has the monkey?" to make sure I didn't take responsibilities from them that they needed to fulfill. Well, I hope this has been helpful for you. I hope this has been helpful for you, because one of the greatest ways you can be an effective leader is to be a master delegator. Go to hansfinzel.com to check out my Leadership Answer Man podcast and other great resources for taking your leadership to the next level.